So here we are. This is Hi, I'm DeepSeek. How can I help you today? This is the chat interface, and away you go. Just by I don't know, quick show of hands or a message to the chat form here. Have people used DeepSeek uh, and yay or nay? And if you could kind of give a show of hands, and then separately, have you used Chat GPT? Feel free to fill in what you've used it for. And similarly with
I tried to use it when it came out, but it required a sign up. Does it still require a sign up?
so the way you can log in, and you can either log in, I think, by creating a password and a sign up, or logging in via a Google account. And so if you have neither of those, or you're uncomfortable with using both of those, hang on for the ride, because I gave them. I logged in via the Google stuff, and if they're stealing my credentials and my information from Google, that well, anyways, I hope they're not. So the background of this is that I am signed in through my Google account. Google does have some limitations as to who they sort of will grant access to, via this mechanism, which is kind of, excuse me, I take it back. Google has some limitations, restrictions as to who they will grant access to for their services. I don't know that there are any limitations on accessing DeepSeek. So this is roughly the agenda. What is it? What are the core features? Again, with a focus on coding. Not talking about legal document analysis, not talking about sort of API-driven programming necessarily. Talking about writing code, writing programs, and further, we'll specifically focus on JavaScript, TypeScript, and Python. Although they've got a whole host of languages. We'll talk about some real world use cases and firsthand knowledge. We'll talk a little bit about integration with developer tools, which I haven't done much. I haven't taken their approaches of integration yet. Frankly, haven't found I've needed to. The live coding demo, I'll kind of get into that and Q&A. So what is it? This is their description of it. It's an AI assistant. And again, to take a step back, they have different interfaces. This DeepSeek chat, which is the chat user interface that you can ask it everything from how to make guacamole to how to fix the engine on your motorcycle. Um, but they also have sort of a subset of the functionality which is specifically targeted towards coding, and that's what I'm talking about here. They talk about the state of the art language models. I'm not going to get into too much of this because I know Bill would embarrass me on a lot of it, but I'm happy to entertain anyone who knows a whole lot about it or anything about it. So again, focusing on code generation, debugging, and optimization, of which I've actually had a significant amount of experience since signing up for this presentation some time ago, which John would know. So, what is the technology behind DeepSeek? They clearly have cobbled together a lot of open source technology. They clearly have scraped and incorporated and utilized a lot of open source code, and then they got a lot of other sort of secret sauce that they have poured into it. The one good thing that is pretty impressive about the DeepSeek stuff, I don't know if anybody's read any of their papers, but they have published a number of papers underlying the technology. You got a few screenshots in the slides to come about it. The background on this, which at least it's the narrative that seems to have made it into the mainstream press, is that seems like the funding, certainly the technological motivation, innovation, has come out of a company in China that essentially does money management of rather sophisticated sorts. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with Renaissance Technologies, which is has been for a long period of time. I don't know what the current status is. High flying technological company, very secretive about what they do. not a lot of open source about what they do. But if you dig through a couple of books, you can trace some of the roots back to natural language processing like decades ago at IBM, actually. So sort of a sister company is a financial management investment company, which probably is using similar kind of big data technologies. So, why might you consider DeepSeek for developing code? I'm not sure if people have thought about this in their personal use. I think a lot more of it has been around, how to make the guacamole. But, I just can't impress upon folks enough that, and I'll try not to repeat myself, it's pretty revolution. It is revolutionary. Um, some of the key benefits that the DeepSeek themselves, when asked, so, what are some of the key benefits? They highlight these, and I can certainly speak to accelerating development cycles. I'll show you before the end of this hour. So the overall strategy is I'll spend an hour on this, and then Kurt, I'll spend an hour on the software side of things, and then Kurt will spend time on the hardware side of things. Reduces boilerplate code, enhances code quality, and it is 24/7. I'll make some kind of off the cuff remarks on this, and as we proceed. One which are just observational and may not be foundational or true even. It seems that DeepSeek gets busier late at night in terms of server busy, server, and so my theory is simple. There are a lot of people in China using it at hours of the day that many people in the United States are sleeping. And you've got fixed capacity hardware. Just an observation. So the 24/7, it is true. I've used it at some pretty wonky hours, but my experience has been much more liberal access, responsive access at certain hours of the day. I don't know if that's true or not. It is a differentiator uh, between DeepSeek and Gemini and the OpenAI ChatGPT. ChatGPT, for people who have used it, extensively, kind of as I have, you'll hit limits, and their limits are kind of hard and fast limits where, okay, we're going to switch you out onto a, a different model. The claim is I don't know if that's because it's more energy efficient or what's going on behind the scenes, but they do have a limit. I've never quite figured out what the quantifier is. They're polite and courteous about it, and they don't shut the door on you entirely. Similarly, there are I'd have to refresh my memory on what Gemini does, but there tend to be some differences in the way these systems work. Whereas DeepSeek seems to be more than welcoming at any kind of time of the day. Let me try this. I'm just gonna, I don't know if this will, can you see that link or not when I pop it up?
No, we
Did I
still
lose
just see the
everyone?
slide. No, I just see the slide. I don't see the whatever popped up when you click on it.
Oh, okay. Here, let me try this. How about that? You see it now?
Yeah, I see that PDF now. Yeah.
Okay, so this is an example of the kind of paper writing that folks do to share the essentially the inside scoop on how they're developing this. And there are a series of these papers at this. How do you pronounce that? Does anybody know? rxiv.org. At any rate, it's a place that seems to publish open source papers, which is kind of
It's
really nice.
archive. I think that's the Greek psi or psi, so archive.
Okay, archive. Okay, archive. Okay, that's nice. I like that. So here you'll see in this graphic on the left, which is this. I don't know. Can anybody count fast? It's not an octagon, or is it? Where they're essentially profiling probably the primary languages that they support in this, and no surprises. We'll scroll down a little bit. Uh, so they talk about how they have built this stuff. Okay, and let's see if we can do this. I guess so. You can actually see the highlighting here. So where they've taken this the corpus of materials from GitHub's Markdown and Stack Exchange. I don't know how people feel about this. Um, but and then they put a lot more effort into it. I don't know how much they feed back into, but anyway, so they do a lot of data crawling, they do a lot of filtering. They look through these, the dependencies, the kind of stuff that some of us have done just on a personal level. When you go looking for to learn from code or how things are done, on a human level, I certainly have done a fair amount of this stuff myself. So this is, as you can see, a summary of the cleaned up training data for the selected programming languages. So it's almost tempting me to go, pull out the C compiler and try and get through the things that stump me. You can see they've got a lot on Java. They don't have as much on Go. They have, let's see, JavaScript here. So, and the metric in the first column is gigabytes of, I presume it's source code. And then over here, and most of what I'll talk about tonight was originated in TypeScript, although kind of I don't know if it's the lion in the room or the elephant in the room, Python. No surprise, Python is heavily utilized, although Java actually, I guess, exceeds the source available from Python. Java is used heavily in the AI world, and so the correlation I would say in this is that low gigabyte code, the quality, the capability, it isn't going to be as robust or, dare I say, impressive as the high gigabyte source, because a lot of this is, how much they can ingest and how much they can feed back. Are there any questions on any of this to this point in time?
I see a
Okay.
couple of questions in the chat.
Say that again.
I see some questions in the chat.
Oh, thanks. Let me see if I can find them.
So Brian, you're going to talk about DeepSeek V1.
So R3, yeah. So the stuff I'm talking about is what's available today. Okay. It's so the big thing. What was it? Release 3, R3 that
Yeah.
they had, which was the older version from about a year ago. And I'll be honest with you. What I ended up doing is what happened there? I ended up sort of digging into the history of and the versioning and the tech papers, and then I concluded it's just way more fun doing things of a coding nature with the technology. Um,
Did we lose him?
Yeah, it looks like Brian disappeared. Oh, he's back on again.
I hope I'm back, but for some reason I can't. When I went to I'm seeing a blank screen. What am I doing wrong here? I'm like drawing. I'm in a drawing screen. That seems like
That's the whiteboard. You don't want the whiteboard.
Thanks, I don't. You're right. How's that? Is that we're back? I apologize for that.
Yeah,
So
that's better.
any more? So there was, my understanding is there's about a year. They introduced it, didn't draw a lot of attention, and then they introduced in January-ish or so the latest model with a couple of papers to boot, and basically knock the socks off participants in the marketplace. Be, in particular, some of their claims, I may get them wrong, but what they can accomplish, what they can do, in particular with math and coding, were just exceptional based on metrics from sort of standardized tests that all of these models can run through. This isn't going to get into a lot of the modeling. I might, when Kurt's doing his thing, be able to dig out a screenshot. But basically, DeepSeek, seems to be like in the top 5, along with the other likely players. So what we just looked at was one of the papers, just so you see it's out there. These are the things that you can do with DeepSeek in different levels of sort of co-programming, code generation to basically to write code in all its modern incarnations. Code completion. I have not done this. This is the kind of thing that they allow you to integrate into, like Code Studio and these other IDEs. It's kind of like code completion on a whole nother level. And for people who are doing this, 7 days a week or 5 days a week or 4 days a week, the IDE integration and the command line approaches might be attractive. I haven't needed it. The debugging assistance, I could go on and on about this, and fixing errors in real time. I have spent countless iterations on code, and particularly in TypeScript and Python, essentially since whenever it was that we agreed to post this talk. And it's unbelievably patient and really impressive. One thing, and I'll just mention some side notes as this goes, and in fact, the DeepSeek, upfront what we are and how it works and things that we're still working on, they do acknowledge that sometimes you get into this Groundhog Day-like experience where, after the 3rd or 4th or 5th attempt to fix a module or a piece of code that isn't functioning right, all of a sudden it's spitting back the same solutions all over again, right? So it's kind of like on the merry-go-round, and you just, and they're upfront about that. It's particularly, I bumped into it a couple of times, particularly with, sort of third-party libraries that in technical, detailed, low-level stuff that anybody would have gotten confused on anyways. So it's very good with debugging assistance. Code optimization, I haven't seen personal problems. I can imagine it would be very easy to just upload a routine or copy and paste literally a routine and ask it to make it faster. I haven't gotten to that point where I've had to do that. The code optimization, the readability of the code is it's beautiful. I mean, the words that I'll use are superlatives and in ways that for somebody who spent way too much time lost in code and lost in bugs, the readability from the start, typically, and I don't know if it's just tuned its code production with me, but it includes comments, explains what it's doing, and in a bunch of cases, this isn't always the case, but when you start to get levels deep into hundreds and hundreds or thousands of lines of code, which I have, it essentially takes a descriptive approach to say, we're going to do this, we're going to do this next, this is what we're writing a module for. Or when you take it kind of deeper into the debugging area, it will sort of explain that, okay, let's try this approach, let's try that approach. DeepSeek gets stuck, like we all do, and there are a lot of parallels to human problem solving. I think you got to take a step back sometime, and I have found this. It dawned on me Well, how about giving it a nudge? And how about saying, okay, maybe it's time to try a different approach? And I was shocked. It works. There have been times when I have particularly, I know it was 11 o'clock at night, but the server is busy. And, this idea of multiple experts, second opinions before surgery, getting 3 estimates before you do a residential renovation. It doesn't hurt to go to another tool and have it evaluate the code and come up with ideas. And that's an effective approach. Okay, so the supported programming languages again tonight is Python and TypeScript, JavaScript. Go, yeah, check. Work with them all, and it's fabulous. The other thing that's very good at is the environmental stuff, the development environment stuff, the settings, and the okay. We've already been through this, and but but okay. So all right, I'll spring the Easter egg uh, uh, reveal here. So this presentation software, actually, I wrote with DeepSeek's uh, significant assistance, and uh, and so we did a basic just markdown language, scripting language, have a way to convert it to HTML, and then do a few things to change the fonts, and the line spacing was really problematical. So let's go loose and spread it out, or let's go really compact. Um, and then there's some other things that are going on behind the scenes here, where the slides themselves have what I kind of came to tag as decorators that do certain things about the font size and the spacing and cool things like that. Um, and then I kind of get to a point where I thought this will be good enough for the Boston Linux UNIX group. This works, and then I went back and I said, but one thing that's handy sometimes is just to take graphic images to share. So how about if I just give you a directory of images and you integrate them into this software, which I'm calling Slidey because it makes slides. And indeed, it did. And indeed, although you can't really tell the difference, this is just a screenshot from the paper or the website. This is an incremented screenshot. Uh, this is an incremented screenshot with the training process. Uh, this is actually, some descriptive text. And if you look down here on the bottom, I guess I need a tool to highlight it. But this is kind of code that can be created from other code, which is this Python code with transformers and so forth and so on. But I didn't do that. I typically did it through the chat. Now, here actually is another image. Now we're on to another directory of screenshot images. And if you see down here in the lower right-hand corner, it is keeping track of the slide count that it's moving through. Here's the screenshot that we saw from the paper. So these are some of the highlights, but again, the real, the paper talks about it. Okay, so we could do a little bit. We're back into the mode of outline mode, markdown, translating the markdown into HTML, and then we're back. How it can be used: prototyping, debugging, learning, collaboration. I guess just outright coding too, but it's a tremendous tool for learning. How does this work? How does that work? Can you explain how that works? I'm trying to figure this out. Whoops, I got I have an error. I have more errors. I got a lot of errors, and it patiently works through things. I didn't do so much prototyping just because I was at ground zero and I wanted to make code that worked. And and I guess the prototyping I did, which we probably won't get into here, but I just basically wanted to go through examples in Python of, how to do tokenizing and how to do some of these statistical analyses that go into building the large language models. So there's no doubt it's a great tool for doing what I kind of call the hello world level of you know tokenizers. So I did use it for prototyping in the sense of when I hit a concept in how they're building these tools, it was like, let's go down deep. How do they count parameters? What are they talking about with hidden, and why are they hidden? And those are good opportunities to prototype in the sense, not so much of prototyping towards a product end or output, but prototyping conceptual interaction to better understand how it works. Um, Here are the things you can do to integrate with, if you're in this full time, you probably already know this stuff. You know what IDEs are, you know what the command line interface is, and you know there are APIs. But again, 100% of what I've done, well, 92% of what I've done has all been through the chat interface. So this is that's just redundant. They're basically saying that the website chat is, kind of for newbies, but I mean, you can get a lot out of it for not a lot into it. This is actually sort of a comparison of the command line interface tool and, pipelines and integrating the functionality into applications. That's a whole new world beyond what we're talking about here tonight. Tonight, it's just, write this code more efficiently, more capably, and more creatively. And so it was like, well, can you give me a side-by-side comparison of the command line interface tool and the IDE plugins? Kind of what are the similarities and differences? This is the table that it spit out. And contrary to, people, maybe you've heard this phrase hallucinations, or, you've heard about the attorney who's called out because they bring into a courtroom a motion of some or a pleading of some sort with totally fabricated, made up uh, notations and cases and precedents, and the judge catches them, and it's so I haven't experienced in focused on coding any of those fabricated hallucinations. That the only thing that I've really stumbled on is this Groundhog Day experience where DeepSeek goes back to a previously failed attempt uh, to help you out. I mean, it's trying to help you out, but it doesn't realize. And what I found is just give it a nudge. The other thing that you can do, it varies by product or by technology. Some of these things are like, it'll tell you, well, my knowledge as of October 2023, it didn't know about DeepSeek or something wild like that, right? And so a lot of this stuff is from those stored billions or tokens that are out there that they processed and conjured up into a large language model that is potentially static until they refresh it and update it. But a lot of these things, Google is really good about this stuff. I think ChatGPT has ways that you can specifically say, incorporate a web search into the response that you're giving me. So, but you need to kind of handle that accordingly. That Gemini or Gemma or Gemini, they seem to be doing more dynamic, going out and collecting things in real time as you're interacting with it. I kind of can't tell with the coding aspect of DeepSeek. Website chat is more, that's redundant. The ecosystem, one of the things that they are certainly driving home is that it is open source. Originally, when I started this, I thought an objective would be get a local version up and running, which you can do. Don't be sending the data out everywhere, which you can do. But I'll put it on the table. Maybe Kurt will pick it up. It takes some hefty hardware to do that. And I was just having too much fun with the code. Uh, Another thing that does kind of we'll come back to. Let's skip that for now. So the live coding demo is, originally I was going to do the Python stuff. I might still do it, but chances are I'll go back. I'll end up back at the whiteboard, which won't be fun for anyone. And instead, what I ended up saying is, well, this is the live coding, demonstration. I guess I could daringly show what this code looks like if anyone was interested. It is so the code to do this little slide presentation is 218 lines of TypeScript, and currently it just gets muted into JavaScript, and then it runs, and away we go. DeepSeek versus traditional code. It's it's fast. So I don't want to take anything away from. I've been fortunate to meet some people who are just unbelievably technologically sophisticated and savvy, and they're the 1%ers who do the work of the 89% of the other folks out there. That those people do exist, but I literally cannot type as fast as DeepSeek is spitting out working, functioning, documented code. And so it's some, there's certainly a level of sophistication, and I alluded to that a little bit with, as you get more involved with low level stuff and, multiple interdependencies of third party libraries, you certainly are getting into a realm of it's kind of finding its way through that, just like a technologist would be finding its way through that if it's new. But it does a remarkable job of understanding what the APIs, what the interfaces are. I had a couple of troubleshooting engagements with this, where was it the wrong version of the library? Was it? I mean, there were some pretty fundamental things where it just was never going to work. It's like, let's try something else. Oh, okay. And so it's a similar to what some developers might. They talk about this. The idea here is that when I sort of asked, so what's this good for within the realm of coding? This was DeepSeek's headline. It's the future of AI in coding. So it just seems to me that people who are either learning a new language or in a new area, or just have code that they want to quickly understand. The same way, for instance, with the Google, the Gemini powered notebook tool that they have, where for free and open to everyone, as best I can tell, you can input up to 50 documents, 50 PDF files, I think, to do analysis, comparison, cross-checking, summary type things. And if you are in that world of document management, the company that you're with or the entrepreneurial adventure that you have, these are just tools the way, calculators were, spreadsheets became, word processors evolved into, and who would ever think about, kind of going a day without accessing, something through a browser. Once you've done it, there's just no going back. It's not DeepSeek is not going to take away the jobs of developers. It's not going to. If anything, I would argue it's going to increase the population of developers, because it makes it easier for people to become competent. I haven't used this for SQL foo. I haven't used this for systems management type things. I haven't used this for security, but all those things, no doubt, you could probe pretty deeply. They do talk about, you know, I guess, well, we could, I won't go to it because the last time I went to it, I ended up at the whiteboard. But, you know, for the record, and I'd welcome anybody telling me this is not a smart thing to do, but I log in through my Google account and things seem to work okay. So there are lots of resources. The documentation, from what I can tell, it's well written. Uh, you know, just diving into the code, it's in using DeepSeek. You know, it's never, you know, blue screened or green screened or you know, crash my system and you know, where the code is going. Okay, so you know, I do think, you know, if you haven't tried it, and maybe you had the chance to put into the chat, if you have or you haven't, but you know, if you aren't using tools like this, I've used ChatGPT, I've used the Gemini stuff, you know, and they've got some new models developing there. I've actually written some of the Python code using the Llama, you know, models, and it's fun. But if you haven't tried it, it's easy, and you know, more importantly, it's free. Okay, so well, no, I would say, I shouldn't say more importantly, because probably more importantly is it's easy, and it's a huge bonus that it's free. And so here is a little bit of an extended, you know, kind of the after party, where when I added in the request that said, hey, how about this? How about taking directories of documents as a way to share a concept of and just have the slide generator generate the slides. So, you know, I'll give you the images, but I don't want to type words. So the first thing I did is, and this is pretty cool. To recap, can you explain what this code does? And by this code is the code that we've been using. It's kind of like one of the, it's almost like a GNU, you know, inspired. Explain to me about the code that we're using to write, you know, to showcase what the code is. Anyways, can you recap? Can you explain what this code does? So this is about, you know, this is some time into the code writing process, and we've been through down different dark alleys and different designs. And by we, I mean, you know, me and DeepSeek. Um, and so we vectored off. Sometimes the thing, you know, it shut down and went to do other things and came back and picked up again. One thing that DeepSeek uh, does is it also times out, but then it says it's time for a new chat, and you just start a new chat. I don't think your chat history transfers over. It's happened a number of times, but it hasn't been problematic. Uh, but some of the other ones, I think ChatGPT is like, you know, they give you the more powerful model, and they're like, you know, sorry, you're in timeout for some number of hours, which, you know, typically for me has been come back tomorrow. And they do give you access to a lower powered model, but the the chats, the history and stuff, you might have to transfer. Anyways, DeepSeek does not, for the user, retain the chat history. Now, other people can wonder what they're, you know, I mean, it's going somewhere, and you'd think somebody is at least reviewing it. But anyways, after this lengthy period of time in working on this thing, I said, can you just recap what you did? Well, this is what it did. Reads a markdown file, and you know, and processes basically the markdown. It handles images, and you know, for anybody who's done markdown stuff, this is pretty, I mean, this is vanilla markdown. It converts markdown to HTML. You know, this stuff can be messy, depending upon what environment you're working in. Now, this number 5 was kind of an afterthought. It's like you know, the spacing and all that, and I don't want to go crazy, but you know, can we put decorators in here on a slide-by-slide basis? And the response was, sure, this is how we can do it, right? So spacing loose. And so I showed that at one point, if on the click-through. Okay, and then it goes and it generates the slide deck, which is kind of what you're seeing. At one point, it did go through multiple sort of design iterations. So in that sense, it was prototyping, where the page numbers were up top and they were part of the title, and the buttons were on the bottom, and there was no font size. There's no, so those were, and again, this is, it's CSS and styling and HTML lingo. And if you're good at that, if you're great at that, it still takes time. And arguably, this was more of an interactive, design-driven process rather than, digging into the bits. And then eventually, we added some interactive controls, and 8 writes the output file to an HTML file, and so this is just it is an HTML file. The images are stored in directories, which this directs to, and you can move this up to a web server, today, and it would function pretty much just as we've seen it. We got that. Okay. This is the kind of stuff that it helps. It shows you descriptively in kind of an IDE style text-driven screen. It kind of shows you what it's doing. There have been multiple times when I've clipped, for instance, view source from a browser, and I've fed it back to it and said, "This is what it's telling me," and they say, "Oh, that explains why we're getting these extra blank lines." So it is the same. It's a similar sort of debugging interaction, except it's just way faster, certainly, than I can personally do. It highlights what the features are. It kind of gives you a little bit of reminder on all of the markdown is in this hard-coded name. You could go as far as you want to go. Again, we've seen this before. Shows you it's got a bunch of different models, which I'm not expert in. This is ChatGPT. This is the standard chat interface. I don't know who came up with it or who owns it, but it is standard. So there's a lot of great information out there. Google has some exceptionally good, well done training videos. You can even get certificates from some of these, and they're great because you can go back and you can really try and figure out how all of these come together. This is the new Gemma thing, which they're claiming is state of the art open models, and it's only a couple of days old, so don't know a whole lot about it. They've got a blog post, which is what this is a screenshot from, and so this, I just wanted to kind of put it in perspective a little bit. People who go far enough back, and I know some of us do, the old Bomar brain, and I remember shopping for those. And then of course the Apple One, and Wozniak, right? And these are big ideas that, just to look at this is and this I was able to screenshot from the Macintosh User Group newsletter, those of us who are around. And if you look at this, I'll just have to pull this out. Jobs unveils Mac, page 4, which I thought, that's pretty good. There was so much good stuff going on that the unveiling of the Mac didn't even make it to the front page of anyways. The point here is that this is, I think, a big deal. And the same way when BLU had had the rollout of Linux, maybe you guys can talk about that a bit. This is from way back when, and dug this out of the the dustbin, and I just look at these things, and these were the Apple power words of when the Mac was first coming out: innovation, power, getting people together. This compatibility, it's just remarkable the way these models are, interoperable with both programming languages and frameworks. And I think the opportunity and excitement is every bit as vibrant with this technology as it was back when the Macintosh really kind of rocked the world. So there you have it. Questions, limitations, criticisms. We got just a couple minutes left before Kurt takes over.
Brian, did you try to have it write any Go code for you? I know that's one of your areas of interest.
I think I did, and uh, let's just really quick do it. I think I'm daring enough to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call up uh, DeepSeek, and I'm going to go live. Hold on. I hope this doesn't really. Okay. Let's see if we can make this a little bigger. Does that help? And so let's do, write me a hello. It's pretty good with type. It's very good with typos. You know, but, it's very good about the packages and where to get them and how to install them. What I don't know, and I haven't asked it, but so you can see in step 3 and 4, it's running the program and then it's showing what the results are. And so there have been times when it's run the code that is given to me, and it gets a working result when I don't. So it actually is clearly running the code, I think, in the background. So let's do this. Write another Golang program that will input markdown file and output that file converted to HTML. So I actually know a little bit of something about converting markdown files into HTML, and haven't done it, and for fun and practical uses. And
It does help to know what you're doing in order to coach these tools through. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, and that's a good word, Bill. Coach to coach it through. And I think the nudge, that's a biggie. And but there are different libraries that you can use for Black Friday is one. It's very robust, and it's one of the other ones. But I've never done this, but let me just do one thing here, see how well it works. So let's just say, uh, can you rewrite the program using the Goldmark library? I mean, it's just unbelievably patient. And here's, I could not type that fast. So Goldmark is the library. I think that they converted over to using Hugo, which is kind of a static site generator. And so here you see you know, let's just see if it can do this. see if we can do this without, it might. Might say we don't do that.
Every time they've announced a technology that was going to obsolete programmers, it exactly created more programmers, as you said. Assembler was going to replace the people who converted assembly language into binary so that it could be punched on cards by somebody else. COBOL was going to allow the accountants to write their own programs.
Yeah.
How'd that work out?
So on a closing note, do you think it, you know, will it laugh at us? But you're right. I think in that sense, it's, you know, it's never going to, it's sort of, wow, this is a throwback. Okay. So any questions? Well, you know,
my question is, how do you verify that the code that it's copied into your code files did not come from a copyright source?
yeah, I think that's a good question, Bill. I think that's a very good question. I wondered, you know, going into this, and I expected somebody might ask that. I don't know the extent, and Bill, you happen to know something about, you know, web crawling and stuff like that, way beyond my ken. But you know, I think I read that Stack Exchange was, you know, getting, you know, were they addressing this? Is Microsoft or, you know, is the New York Times in a lawsuit with any well-known companies about, you know, scraping their, what do they refer to it earlier, corpus of content? So I think that is a real legitimate concern. Another criticism of DeepSeek is there are no guardrails of, you know, other than, you know, inquiring about Tiananmen Square or things that are politically sensitive and you know, and blocked, which they, you know, they politely say something to the effect of, you know, I have no information on that or something like that. But you know, citing sources, citing, I really don't know. I don't know how much of this they have fine-tuned, but you know, they talk about reinforcement learning as an approach that they have used to sort of zero in on a better solution. But I think that's a real good question.
Well, I think insofar as there's any case law on this at all, you know, Sarah Silverman on behalf of SAG-AFTRA sued, I think, OpenAI, and none of it, everything is being interpreted as fair use right now, which is pretty ridiculous. I mean, fair use is a small sample, like a needle drop, but you know, OpenAI is ingesting everything. So
And what's fair use for an academic project is different from fair use for a commercial product.
yeah,
Yeah, and you know, OpenAI has a pretty robust budget, and you know, so presumably they are able to license or, you know, even Wikipedia, right? Uh, you know, I mean, is it fair use to train these models on, you know, even though maybe the content isn't utilized or shared? Uh, you raise really good questions.
Wikipedia has a licensing statement. Individual facts are not copyrightable, but the collection of facts and the presentation of facts is copyright and licensed, and Wikipedia has a license statement that says what acknowledgement you must give if you use it freely.
Yeah. So I just, Googling and, April 10th, 2024, it talks about kind of exactly the question that Bill had raised, where there's a core allegation about infringement of copyrights. And actually it goes into what I had referred to as well in terms of, just using it for training, right? Which isn't it's an enormous part of this. So yeah, those are really great issues, and I guess you'll need copyright lawyers in-house as well as externally to keep tabs on this, particularly where there are different country-driven legal environments at play here.
Yeah, what you stand to lose if you get hit with a copyright lawsuit with actual claims for damages and discovery in terms of just the costs of going to trial, even if you win, is higher than you'll save by using an illicitly sourced tool.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't been a recipient of a discovery notice from a litigation attorney, if you haven't been examined for a deposition in a career in software, well, lucky you. Been there, done that, got some new orifices broached. It was not pleasant. And we won the case I thought we should win, and my boss lost the case my boss should lose. So I'm happy with the results of the cases. But it was very unpleasant. And if you have to pay the attorney, oh boy, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
So in that vein, this is a question because I don't know any of this stuff. I'm going to say any one of these open AI models here. I use any one of these vendors. They all have different licensing terms. I generate an application. I then create a business and make money off of that application. Is there anything that prevents anybody in the future from deciding they created that code because it was off of their site and therefore they get some of the rights or revenue of that? Or are all of these sites, all of the licensing terms, are they all kind of equally saying you can make money off of any of this that you want, and we claim no responsibility if it is good, bad, or whatever? Is that something that's common, or is that just a totally irrelevant question here?
I think from my perspective, it's a great question. And I think it's still early though. And people are trying, I sort of naively in the back of my mind thought, okay, well, they've only scraped the stuff off of GitHub that has an MIT license on it that says you can do anything you want with it, right? And there's an awful lot of that code out there. And so that's the kind of thing that would certainly allow any remixing or so I don't know. I guess I'm gonna have to go back and read each of the licensing agreements.
If the large language model was sourced only from MIT or Berkeley licensed projects on GitHub, then it would be safe. But Um, but actually, I mean, you're still supposed to credit where you got it from. And if they file off the serial numbers of where they got it from, you're not giving acknowledgement to the original author.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
So there's still liability.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
if you buy a pistol with filed off serial numbers, you can't claim ignorance that it was illegal because the serial number was filed off. That's proof it was illegal. So claiming ignorance that there was a criminal purchase, and same thing with this. You're getting code that was swiped from somebody, and you don't know if it was swiped from somebody that put it out under MIT license so you can thank them, or from somebody who put it out under a proprietary example and no, you can't copy this, but you can look at it. And they went and copied it and then copied it into your project. And now if they find that your code matches their code, they have a good case to bring you into court because your lawyers are less heavy than OpenAI's lawyers, so they'll sue you.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is the Wild West. This demo is all, of this all new this new technology. Obviously, there's so many legal aspects, and so many people have explored this. Maybe there are people that can speak on this from the legal side. It was just a question that's been lingering in my head, that there's maybe some Trojan horses in the licensing terms of some of these sites. But again, enough people use them that there must be that information out there.
Yeah,
It's just
the
interesting to me.
problem, the real problem is, I mean, there could be in the terms of one of these sites, and of course their terms of service probably say they can change the terms of service at any time. But the real problem is the licenses that they violated in creating their product that create causes of action. And while I'm not a lawyer, yes, I did actually study this in college.
Okay, well, thanks. Jerry, you had something, or I'll sign off and make room for Kurt.
Can
Okay,
you hear
well,
me?
let's hear from Kurt.
Wait a minute.
Okay. Let me see how to share here.
Oh, John, just use your elbows.
Okay, well, can you hear me? I would just
can hear
like to
you fine.
say it's been 1,000 years since I looked at either the Berkeley or the MIT license. But when I did look at them, it seems to me that in the middle of the license, they had a clause that said, we don't guarantee this software for any use whatsoever. And consequently, because of that clause, I think that any issue of you being sued, whether using Berkeley or MIT code or anything else, comes back to you.
It's a fair point.
I mean, one of the reasons why they did that was because they wanted to have a clause right in their software that said, hey, if this software causes your house to burst into flames and burn to the ground, it's not our fault. It's not our problem. Part of the license of using the software is don't blame us. I'm done.
Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, well, we're going to have an exercise in induction. Brian talked about the very specific reduction of practice of an LLM, and I'm going to go up the chain and talk about broad concepts of some of the foundational parts of what he talked about. So the next time you watch Sherlock, just play it backwards, and Benedict Cumberbatch can jump from the ground up to the top of the building, and that'll be induction. Anyway, I only have about 30 minutes too, so I'll tear through this. One of the fundamental points we're going to have to talk about when we start talking about the hardware intelligence is what's more important, precision or accuracy. And the AI business broadly has determined that low precision is a priority to the point of reductio ad absurdum. There's some good things you can do with okay, and there we go. some good things you can do with low precision. I think you all recognize that photo in the center there, that black and white photo. That's just represented in 8 grayscale, so 3 bits, and you transferred a tremendous amount of information with that graphic, and just think how much memory you saved with it. The graphic to the right of it, I don't suppose you probably do know what that one is. There's a very interesting story about that. It's called the illegal GIF. You can't use it on academic papers anymore. And that Bobby Broccoli's YouTube page has a very long, little interesting documentary about that. So
Is that the gal with the hat?
I figured you'd know. That's yeah. I guess you can't submit that in a paper in a peer-reviewed conference anymore. It'd be interesting to see if you can work around it somehow. Maybe changing the pixel depth so that it doesn't get discovered on the. I mean, it's a pain in the butt to submit a paper these days. There's all sorts of. You submit it and it's just
no. She was a classic of SIGGRAPH, and if I and they've only ever shown the face and the hat usually, but I think she was a fold out pictorial originally.
Yep, and I don't even think you can suggest it now, so you have to pixelate it. That's what the Bobby Broccoli documentary is about. So it ain't Abraham Lincoln though.
That's a different broccoli family, huh?
I believe it's well, he's a Canadian, so he's no relation to Albert Broccoli. Anyway, we'll stick that into one of our meetings. Okay, so in the course of the last, I don't know, if you want to go way back, 4 or 5, maybe even as far back as 6 months ago, we didn't have huge paradigms built around all of these things that we now do. People are paying to get Mid-Journey working to do graphics and video. I've seen just absolutely jaw-dropping video trailers done in AI video, and it's not that you sit there and you manage it. You just like Brian showed us. You get very clever at how to build exactly what you want into the prompt, and then you let the AI go at it. And the 1% of this entire industry that we've been talking about, RAGs and LLMs and SLMs and GPTs, that is that CLI interface that you have on either the po.com webpage or one of the tools that Brian was using. That's a very small percentage of the industry, but it's a very profound and mature, if that's the right word, industry. Now, DeepSeek, quite famously, one of the bigger, better, cheaper open source LLM frameworks. But even they've got competition in the FOSS world. A Berkeley student reduced DeepSeek down to an LLM that will run on a single server that will solve Countdown for you. I don't know if you're familiar with the game Countdown. It's a kind of a popular television show in Great Britain. But you start with 8 numbers and you ask either a human, as the television show in Great Britain does, or a computer to take those numbers and through the 4 operators of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, reduce it to either 0 or as close as possible. And the tiny 0 code from Berkeley will do that for you. And it's, like I say, it's not only free, but it's pretty damn close to real time.
That's an amusing application because text-based AI and reasoning code has traditionally been terrible with arithmetic. I tried doing an arithmetic-based, I didn't call it an expert system, I called it an artificial bureaucracy system close to 40 years ago during a previous AI outbreak, and wasn't so good at it. And we've been seeing other things. But fascinatingly, that's the second time this month I've heard about that particular TV show, because a semi-famous mathematician was a guest on that show in the last few weeks. Weird.
Well, one would think that the rules of the show, if you apply that to a computer program, they may be able to like chunk it or something. So the rules of the show are no 3-digit numbers. So you're not having 150 or 600 or anything like that in it. So so that there might be a way to get out of any arithmetic. I don't know. I'm going to read up. I don't think the LLM was the interesting bit for Tiny Zero, but it could be that they've got a way around doing any substantially, compute intensive math as well. So another broad and deep business is people who are making their day job as AI influencers. Now, Matt Berman, I probably see one of his videos at least every 3 days, maybe 2 times a week. He just has jaw-dropping access to certain product lines. He's got a very technical AI YouTube channel. Matt Wolf is more of he goes to CES and things like that. He's more of a broad AI, like if I don't know, if Westinghouse or that's not a good example. If you know Best Buy came out with an AI product, he'd probably break that first. He does a lot more of the broader market. David Shapiro was an industry guy who now runs his own evaluation of LLMs when they come out. He's it's a very entertaining channel he has. He wears a Star Trek TNG outfit. Wes Roth, Patrick Boyle, these guys also have access to breaking information. I think that's where we get most of our. Some of them must live overseas. That's the only explanation. Patrick Boyle, I think, certainly lives in the EU. So they come out with these sort of analyses and breakdowns of products. Certainly maybe 24 or 48 hours after they've been released to the wild, and they're very good too. This one here, so this Matt Berman piece, only about a week and a half old, and he compared the Alibaba's QWen 70 billion parameters to DeepSeek's 761 billion parameter, and found that it was at least as fast, possibly cheaper. DeepSeek makes $500,000 a month on people who use their services, even though they're far and away the cheapest, per token. Yeah, I don't know if you got billed for anything, Brian, when you were using DeepSeek. I imagine you were on one of the try before you buy deals, but there's just it's very hard to stay. The fact that Berman is posting these things 38 hours before BLU starts is very frustrating because it's very very hard to stay contemporary. Lex Friedman, of course, a lot of you probably know him. He does a lot more than just interviewing AI professionals. He used to be strictly AI. He taught a course during IAP in January at MIT called Deep Learning. I think I see his name is still on there, but he lives in Austin, Texas now, so I'm not sure he's teaching any courses. The last two on this list, Practical AI, that's a very good podcast, audio only. I think that's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Me, Myself, and AI is a Sloan. That's more of a business school, MIT Business School influence podcast. This last week was DeepSeek Open Source Week, and they just released just a jaw-dropping number of products into their open source GitHub. Like I say, I'm kind of impressed. Brian told us the history of the company behind DeepSeek. They were very much into hedge funds and modeling of fintech, and they said, well, we could generalize this and make it much more of an LLM framework, and for them to be giving weights away and basically telling people like students at University of Berkeley to, all right, here's how we did it. If you guys can find some other way to optimize something, and they're finding ways to use reinforcement learning to get slightly better performance out of a DeepSeek recompile. the reason I put the CFP page on there, when I went looking for conferences with AI, there was something like 900 of them. I mean, that little screen grab right there, that was part of page one. And you'll notice that's like today, tomorrow, and yesterday. But we didn't even really hit all of the CFPs for the AI conferences. NeurIPS, NeurIPS.cc, that's the 800-pound gorilla of AI conferences. That's a lot of grad students really overtax the resources at their universities the week before NeurIPS. Because when you're running one of these models, you're downloading a spectacularly large data set from Hugging Face, and then you're using as many of the parameters and tokens as you can. If you either because you've got one of these free accounts that you get to use for a little while and then you get shut off at the end of the month, or what's much more likely is you're buying into one of these higher level tiers from XAI or Microsoft or somebody. It's pretty jaw dropping just how memory intensive and resource intensive these codes are. I'll talk a little bit about what the this sort of rapid evolution of what people want to move out of your million line AI code onto an accelerator of some variety. A lot of it is good old stuff that we've had to accelerate in the HPC business for many years. Figured out how into their soccer die or SOM or and of course the famous ones are Intel bringing vector extensions into their processor and x87 math uh, libraries and incorporating them into silicon, which ostensibly would run faster than an ASIC. The great thing about ASICs, at least back in the early days, was if the model changed, you could replace that add-in card, and you were only out the cost of the first iteration of the add-in card. A lot of that business has moved to FPGAs. I'll talk a little bit about how NVIDIA, who's the big GPU manufacturer, has approached this. Now this little company here, I only discovered this a couple of weeks ago, Etched.ai. So they are trying to get into the tensor acceleration. Now Google did have a PCI-based TPU that they never went into production with. This was never a retail product. However, they did manufacture quite a few of them and stuck them into some of their early AI supers, and I think that really educated companies like NVIDIA on what to start incorporating into their host adapters, or what ended up happening at NVIDIA, migrating all of that into into the core processor. If NVIDIA had gotten their way a couple of years ago, they would have merged with SoftBank and ARM, and they would have had an integrated processor where the traditional functionality that NVIDIA was invested in and traditional CPU functionality that ARM had worked mostly in conjunction with big companies like Apple and NVIDIA to incorporate some of the HPC and supercomputing functionality. They would somehow combine all of that into one unified stock that would have also have been able to support AI and machine learning. Well, as you know, ARM and NVIDIA weren't allowed to merge, but NVIDIA hasn't lost too much sleep over it, or for that matter, Apple. They all have architectural licenses with ARM, so they can, even without having access to everything that ARM knows, I think they know sufficiently enough so that they can use the CPU portions that they are interested in to support their market. So to that end, this company here, I don't know if you're familiar with the Thiel Fellowship, the Peter Thiel Fellowship. So Peter Thiel pays students to quit college and start companies, and this is etched, I think, as 3 or 4 Harvard students that he convinced, or maybe they convinced him, that they were going to leave school and start and do a startup. So they're a Thiel Fellowship. He basically arranged for their first round of funding to pursue this project. That right there certainly looks like at best a a physical mock-up, but it's probably more likely just a graphic. Okay, so I'm going even further back here. I know Bill's going to hate this, but Minsky uh, used to say these things that are, they put a book together of Minsky Cohen.
Oh, I like that quote. I've been using that quote for 40 years.
Yeah. So I think what he meant by this. So this is a metaphor, of course, and his point is that we're really enamored with new technology for a little while because some of these things are just so charismatic and anthropomorphic, and that certainly was the case with Eliza, and to a lesser extent, some of these GPTs that are like, oh my God, is there a mechanical Turk behind this curtain that's giving me these answers because that was so incredible. That sounded like a human. So uh, so it, I don't know if the GPT interface, you do 20 questions with GPT, so there's no way you're making a Turing test decision there. Um, I think substantially the classical definition of the Turing test, we're going to have to probably move off of that because, Alan Turing, I think he envisioned something that with two humans or a human and an AI were separated by a teletype, I think was his first description of the Turing test.
Correct.
So, yeah, so there has to be something to take out there, there's got to be some way that either an AI or a real eye could somehow influence the contest through a side channel, through maybe inflection or something. So maybe we do need to revisit the Turing test. There have been many claims that the Turing test has been solved in recent years. Um, so I've read some interviews with Kasparov. I think a lot of you saw that Deep Blue matches, the chess matches. Kasparov says, well, if you're interested in both chess and AI programming, you can beat Deep Blue now. And it's because the programmers, the original programmers weren't really that much into chess. So they threw in some things that a human chess player would never do, apparently. And now that's kind of a tell that you're on the other side of that curtain. You're playing a chess computer. So I'll have to follow up on that. I don't know if that was the interview with Kasparov, but I have read that there are now ways to beat chess uh, uh, games because they have machine tells. So it'll be interesting to know if there's someone who can combine both of those. That sounds like a left brain and a right brain skill. Um, AlphaGo is a much deeper and denser. I don't think you'll ever be able to do a brute force search of Go. That was something you probably can't do a brute force search, end game, from move one in in chess either. But you can certainly do 12 deep in real time. So that's a problem for humans. So maybe chess is not going to be beatable for that reason. I suspect some of you saw the Jeopardy Watson IBM Watson episodes. That was a classic of that actually proved Minsky's postulate there. So what was really cool about that was
Yeah,
Watson
we should
actually.
be explicit that Minsky's cone at the top of the slide means that AI is research, and when a specific technology that AI has been working on becomes practical and goes into engineering, it gets a new name.
Yeah,
Machine vision is when it's in the factory guiding robots doing repetitive work is not AI anymore, it's engineering. The
Right.
stuff in Teslas that are crashing into trucks that are sideways, and maybe AI still because it isn't working.
And
The
yeah,
first 80% of functionality takes 20% of the effort.
yeah. And
The
when
next
people have said,
80% takes the next 80% of the effort, and you get diminishing returns, and eventually it may be good enough.
yeah, and when people were claiming that expert systems were AI, he said, give it a year, it'll come back to academia, and we'll have, and maybe that huge market that came up
Well,
around that.
expert systems were reduced to engineering, and it was found that it was kind of expensive engineering, which is why they kept putting money into machine learning, which is what these LLMs are. They're just another version of Minsky perceptron neural net, which is basically many equations in too many unknowns, without any ability to see what the equations are, and hoping that you could build something like an expert system without knowledge engineers having to beat the information out of the experts with a stick.
Yeah,
What I liked about knowledge engineering was the same thing that our attorney in the lawsuit that we won liked about being a technology trial attorney, and my buddy who switched from electrical engineering to patent attorney liked, is you have to become an expert temporarily in a field to cross-examine an expert or to file
yeah,
a patent. And the advantage expert systems have over these perceptron neural net deep learning large language model blah 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 magic cookies is they're explainable, they're traceable, they're auditable. You can explain why it works and who we interviewed, where we got the information. And businesses do not want their expert system to be auditable. If you train an expert system, suppose, or a neural network on all of the resumes that you called into interviews and who passed and who failed the interview, and the resumes that you didn't call in for interviews, it will intuit that you don't hire people with names that sound like their mother was black.
yeah,
And it will institutionalize your institutional racism deniably. They like neural networks that can't explain how they work.
yep,
So that I've said that any machine learning expert system, whatever you want to call it, that can't truly explain its decision or recommendation, as opposed to re-hallucinating an explanation of its prior hallucination, which is what these extrapolative models do. And that's the correct word for it. They're extrapolating. Which, if you remember from calculus, if you don't have enough data points, extrapolating is going to hurt.
yeah. And of course
It's
they
unethical.
also, and they also, the way they do reinforcement learning is they generate synthetic data, and of course they're generating that synthetic data based upon authority.
Oh, I mean, don't get me started on reinforcement learning. That's using snake oil to distill distilled snake oil.
Yeah.
That's the same thing, just a deeper hole.
Okay. So we're right now looking at I should okay, that's my next slide, but let me do that. Oh, all right. My slides are out of order. I'll do this one. So if any of you have seen the NVIDIA documentary, fascinating story. There was a lot of people in the graphics processor space when NVIDIA was was one of many competing for market share, and they had a couple of really, tough years. Dodged a couple of bullets. Kind of a classic Silicon Valley venture capital story. How they ended up not only competing within the graphics card space, and they were strictly an add-in card, ISA and PCI. That was their entire space, along with a bunch of other companies. Ended up dominating it. Came out with CUDA in around 2006, and that was some partnership. There was a professor that came out with a neural interface. Let me finish up here. So this is where we ended up. It used to be that 5 megawatts was a big data center. No more. That graph over in the bottom right is really telling us that we're not keeping up. The resources are not keeping up with the demand. So Oracle, Gates Foundation is looking. I believe there's one power plant running at 3 Mile Island. They want to restart the old one that's been shut down for 20 or 30 years. Meta's got one in Wyoming that's going to be 30 or 40 or 50 megawatts. The famous one in Tennessee that XAI built for their AI work. These are just absolutely not only spectacularly power hungry data centers, but there's going to be lots of them. And, the energy density, the specific power is going to be just spectacularally high. I would imagine there's all sorts of things that, trying to buy a transformer from EverSource right now is a 2-year wait. It's going to be unbelievable, the demand for this in the next certainly 12 and 18 months. So maybe we'll benefit from, maybe people will say, well, you can get 10 times the amount of processing done if you were running one of these energy efficient, LLMs. So why don't you get DeepSeek? And then after you're comfortable with DeepSeek, you get, QN 70 billion parameters. And then you can run what you were running in a data center on one rack or one server. That will, of course, not keep people from buying racks and servers. They'll just fill up the 50 megawatts full of space with more gear, and we'll just do more fine resolution LLMs. The reason I dropped this in here, every year I send in my April Fool's joke to the BLU discuss list, but my one last year didn't make it. I had someone falling asleep on a Tesla motorcycle in auto drive mode on a highway in California, and you know what? That's not a bad. That was an AI. That was, I believe, called Microsoft Designer with the AI, co-design agent. Took me probably 3 or 4 tries, and it came out pretty good. I mean, they got the Tesla. They didn't misspell Tesla. The guy's got all his fingers. So I'm going to do another one this April 1st. It's just that my one last year didn't make it. I've got my one from 2 years ago there, but this one graphic here that I sent in last year. But I know, Jabber, I think I'm getting filtered. Couldn't make it last April 1st.